What's your full name?
Guy Carlton Whidden II.
All right. And what's your birth date?
6/18/23.
Coming up very soon. Happy birthday, a little early.
Thank you, Jeff.
I won't see you then, but I'll
All right.
wish you happy birthday now.
Yeah, bring me a cake.
Okay. And where were you born?
Where?
Yes, sir.
Well, probably somewhere around Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Hmm?
And
I wasn't old enough to really know.
yeah, I just go by what's written on the birth certificate.
Yeah.
Now, how many siblings? Do you have any?
Brother and a sister, both of them have passed away in the last year.
I don't really have to ask you a whole lot because you've got interviews online already. I know most everything about you, your service anyway. But you were with the 502nd
502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment,
of the 101st Airborne.
101st Airborne Division.
And
Yes.
HQ company.
Headquarters, Company 2nd Battalion. Yeah, we weren't pencil pushers.
No,
Yeah,
not at all.
yeah, we machine gunners were assigned to D, E, and F companies, whichever company needed us, and there wasn't a time that went by that they were able. They wanted to see us because their own machine guns would be knocked out.
Yeah.
So then we, as a headquarters company, would provide machine gunners as well as mortarmen.
My dad was in the HQ company in Korea.
Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which battalion?
Well, 187th 2nd Battalion.
187th. Oh yeah. Good unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Rakkasans. But
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about some of the things you did, as much as you want to share. I know you made your first jump was D-Day, right?
First jump, combat jump was D-Day, and we only do two combat jumps, and the second one was Holland,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the end of the jumps. Of course, our troops were in the bulge, so those of us who couldn't make it, probably we didn't miss too much. The cold had to be not so good.
Yeah, you could probably do without that, huh?
Yes, that happened in Holland.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course that actually was the end of the war for me.
Yeah. What happened there?
Well, we were surrounded by the Germans, a division that were in Holland at the time, a good group of soldiers, high-level soldiers, and then the retreating Germans from Normandy, because they were in Normandy on D-Day, and in the process of moving on, they came to Holland and hit us there in Holland, and they came from another section. So in effect, we were surrounded, you know. The ones that were already there and the German unit here. And then they would crisscross mortaring our own troops that were in the field. And there was no getting out of the field. You had to just sit and wait for it to end.
Yeah. Who was it said you're surrounded and well, you're paratroopers. You're supposed to be surrounded.
We were surrounded there, you know. We couldn't move out. We had to sit there and take it. We had been retreating at the time and our unit was, of course, against superior forces, and they had separated us quite a bit. My other than my own squad, which became my own squad at my request, was there. I don't know of any other squad. So apparently we all got split up in the process of retreating. Because most of the time we didn't know whether we were retreating or what we were doing. We did what we were told to do.
Yeah. So but how you actually got wounded, how did that happen?
Well, it happened in the process of the mortaring. Germans were mortaring from here over here toward their own lines over here, and these Germans over here were mortaring that way.
Oh boy.
But they stopped the mortaring short of going to their own troops, and back and forth. It doesn't give you much to do except try to avoid getting hit.
Yeah.
And by the end of that afternoon, I don't recall anybody standing up. I think if guys were alive, there could have been, but there wasn't anybody. There was nothing constructive from a military standpoint that you could do. You could only wait until the mortaring stopped. Then you could move on.
And in the process, you just happened to get hit. One got too close, and
well, you never knew when you were going to get hit. But I was telling my squad to get down on the ground, because if you're on the ground, it almost has to be a dead hit. I mean, if it drops right next to, you might be caught up in the concussion, or you might get some shrapnel, but you're less would it happen that you would get much shrapnel. If you were standing up, because of the direction the metal goes, you're certainly not going to. You'll probably be dead, because you'll be getting most of the shrapnel in your upper body. So the best bet when you're under fire and you can't get out of a situation is to just lie down, protect your head, and wait it out and hope one doesn't drop on top of you. So, and then of course my whole squad was killed. Well, there were only 4 in the squad, but all 3 of them were killed, and because they wouldn't listen to me for the most part, because we were all privates, and for one of us to say I'm a corporal now, that was a joke. I was kind of serious about it. I thought somebody had to take charge, but so they were just sort of joking around with me. But mostly the one who was closest to me, he was a good friend of mine. That was, he died instantly. He was caught right in the middle of it, and he never knew what hit him. He's still buried over there. There's only 2 in that graveyard. I forget the name of the cemetery, but it's owned by. We own the cemetery. They gave it to us, and one of our lieutenants is still buried there. And every year I've been across to Holland. I've visited the lieutenant's grave site, as well as this other private.
So that was the end of the war for you. How long did it take you to mend from?
Well, I was wounded
actually
wounded on the 2nd day, late in the day, and then after I was eventually treated we went to England, and we were there, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then they gave us a choice of either flying back to the States or going by boat. I decided to go by boat. So then I was in hospitals over there, ended up in one in Georgia, down in Georgia, and it was in the spring, I think right after the war ended in Europe is when I left. So I would not have gone back over again. The war was over. But then there was not an opportunity, but I almost volunteered to go to the Pacific because the war was still on there. And then I decided I would like to return to the airborne school. So I went down there, and I had to go through the first week again to see if I was physically capable to do what an instructor does. But what I had been doing in the hospital toward the end was going out, sneaking out of the hospital, which I wasn't supposed to do, and doing some running and doing push-ups and stuff like that. So when they asked me, where do you want to go now? I said, the airborne school. He said, you've been in the hospital all these months. You couldn't pass the test. Well, I said, try me. So they sent me down. They probably thought I wouldn't make it. But I had gotten myself back in shape again.
That's what I need to be doing for this October when I go jump.
Well, you just sort of do a little exercise, you know. You know, it's all downhill when you jump out of a plane.
Yes, it is, but the landing...
Well, the landing, yeah. But you could practice jumping off of a chair or something like that, something that's stable.
Yeah.
And then when your feet hit the ground, sort of go into a tumble.
Yeah.
You know. But when you go into the tumble, you want to lock your arm and take it here. You don't want to hit the ground like that.
A good PLF, right?
Yep. Parachute, landing, fall.
Yeah, we'll be working on that. And speaking of that, your first combat jump on D-Day, I heard a little bit of your story on that. The thing that surprised me the most was the altitude you jumped from.
Yeah. Well, our particular plane was 300 feet. Well, the pilot, when he goes back to England, has to report at what altitude his plane load jumped from.
Yeah.
So some of us kept a logbook so that after the jump we could ascertain what level we jumped from and all the things that we needed to put in our logbook. But I found when we got back to England, I found out that our plane he dropped us to 300 feet. I know it was close to the ground because after I exited the plane, it seemed like I hit the ground right away.
Yeah, I know we'll be. I asked my dad once where they jumped from. He said it was about 800 feet.
Yeah, most of them did, around 800 feet.
But on D-Day, all kinds of things were happening.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You were getting shot at and
Sure.
flak and just what was that like? You're in the plane. I know you had it darkened because of the smoking thing, but
Yeah.
still, I'm sure you could see lights.
Well,
And hear things.
our plane was the first combat platoon to land in France, other than the Pathfinders who came in earlier.
Yeah.
But we know that because our lieutenant wrote home to his family that he was the first lieutenant to drop into Normandy, and he was. So he wasn't. We weren't in the same plane, but he may have been plane number 1. I was plane number 3, maybe. So there wasn't much activity on the ground at that point, but soon as we hit the ground, everything broke loose, you know.
So you're seeing more planes coming behind you, right? Dropping paratroopers, and the noise and
of course a lot of planes were getting hit too. Planes were hitting the ground, and some planes they never had a chance to get out of the plane, and all hell broke loose, to put it in understandable terms, because when I first dropped in there, it was relatively quiet, but it wasn't long before the Germans were awake, and there was a lot of noise then. And of course, there was more bad stuff going up at the planes coming in.
Yeah.
So it was nice to actually drop without too many problems.
How was your landing?
Well, the landing itself, I hit pretty hard, and I didn't come in standing up, and it was pretty dark because when all the planes were coming in and there was more light out there with exploding shells on the ground, you could see where you are for the most part, but that hadn't happened yet. So when I landed, it was in the dark, and I know that I almost hit a hedgerow right over the top of it, and came in pretty hard. But then an equipment bundle it was a white equipment bundle. It was white because that's where our weapons were. If it were any other color, we'd never find our weapons.
Right.
And it was coming toward me, oscillating through the air, and they weighs a lot. And the last thing I remember is it came right into my face and knocked me cold.
Oh, were you on the ground already?
I was on the ground.
And so it came right along and
came and it was coming like this, and it can weigh several hundred pounds.
Yeah.
And it just was floating down, going back and forth, coming down, and all of a sudden it hit me in the side of the head. If it hit me any differently, it might have killed me, but it must have just got enough of my head to knock me out.
Whew.
But it wasn't a nice trip over, because prior to leaving, we voted to see whether we would smoke or not. Well, I think there was one other guy and myself who didn't smoke, so we lost the vote. They voted to smoke. So that meant they closed the exit door, and otherwise they'd keep it open, and the other planes would get spray coming in, which made it nice and cool, because we went over low over the water. We didn't fly high. In order to avoid German radar, we were right over the water, and then they get spray. Well, our door was closed because our guys were smoking, and then we had to have the curtains closed, because if we were all smoking when we came in over Normandy, you know, when you drag on a cigarette,
a little red light,
it would light things up, and that could be picked up from the ground. So it was bad, because some of them fell asleep right away because they'd taken Dramamine pills for air sickness. I didn't take one, and but you couldn't talk because the sound of the engine and everything else. Nobody was talking. You couldn't hear each other, and it was dark inside the plane. When they light up a cigarette, you see a guy's face, But and
Interesting.
the smell was bad. There wasn't any bathroom. So if they had to go to the bathroom, well, quite obviously they did it with their pants on. So it was a stinky mess. I was glad to get out of the plane, to be honest with you.
Well, you did, and eventually grouped up with some guys, and
Hopefully from your outfit.
not the guys you expected to.
Yeah, didn't see any of my friends until late in the afternoon.
Okay.
I was with people I didn't know.
And you were close to St. Mary Glees, right?
Yeah, maybe at the most an eighth of a mile. We're very close.
Oh yeah.
You could see there was one fire inside of St. Mary Glees. The building had been gutted.
Mm-hmm.
The roof was caved in and all that. And then the 82nd would come in, some guys get sucked right into the fire.
Oh gosh.
An awful way to die. Be sucked in there and burned alive.
Yeah. War's terrible. You don't expect all of that, but
Yeah, it was terrible.
so most details like that I've heard and read your story, but afterwards, after you came back home, you what did you do then?
Burn.
What did you do after you're back home, back to civilian life?
Well, as soon as I got back, it was, I think right after the turn of the year there, in January or February, and then I went on, joined the 2020 club. For 20 weeks, you could stand in a line, pick up $20, and you do it every week. And my family they said it's about time you decided whether you're going to go to work or you're going to,
Mm-hmm.
stay in the Army. So I decided to go to college, and that's when the free money stopped. We were using that to date girls with $20 a week for 20 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty good sense of humor.
Well, I always tried to. He asked me about the lieutenant's name. Well, Lieutenant Atkins you have two lieutenants to a platoon. One takes care of the two sections. One stays, but then there's one that's the leading lieutenant. Lieutenant Atkins, I guess they're both first lieutenants, but he had been one longer. He died at the end of the war. The war was over, and he volunteered to stay behind, and they had an exercise with live ammunition. And a mortar round came in, killed him and a few others.
Oh my.
The war was over.
Oh gosh, how senseless.
Yeah, and the other lieutenant, Lieutenant Brungard, and he died about the same time I was wounded, I believe. He was in another field.
So he's the one that's buried over in Holland.
He's buried in Holland.
Okay.
I've been to his gravesite. His gravesite's located right where the main buildings are when you come in. And my friend, he's buried at the other end of the cemetery. So that's a long walk. But I used to walk down there. There would be nobody there but me and his gravesite. And I'd talk just like it was back then,
How many times have you been back?
Oh, I've been back a number of times. I don't know.
Okay.
I've been over there at least 10 times, I guess.
Okay.
Pretty
Well,
much
that's
on a regular basis.
Good.
Most of it paid for. A couple of the early trips I paid for myself. But then when these different groups started paying for it, then
Hey, why not?
that's the thing to do.
I'm hoping to go over there next year if everything's opened up again.
You'll enjoy it. I think you'll like. I like France, but very few of the French speak English. But we all try to get along together, and they're nice people. It's easy to get along with them. But in Holland, they all speak English.
And they treat you very well, don't they?
They do. Yeah, the lady who was here a little while ago, she has relatives over there. Her family are from Holland.
Great. So, after college, you did you start teaching? Is that what or
Yeah, I went to the one college, Lafayette, and I started out pretty well, but I got involved in dancing and stuff like that with the girls, and playing sports, and I didn't study as hard, so I kind of flunked out in a way. Yeah, they told me to go somewhere else, which I did.
Where did you go? Rutgers?
Well, I went to Lafayette at first, but then after I started out good, but the pre-med was rough, and I was dating girls and belonged to a frat house fraternity, and then I was out dancing with the girls, and it just wasn't going to work. So somebody said, go to a teacher's college, you won't have to work half as hard. Well, that's what I did. I found out it was much easier.
What did you teach?
I taught elementary, but I had planned to teach high school.
Yeah.
But my supervisor, she said, why don't you want to teach elementary? And I said, I want to teach high school kids. And I said, I prefer to teach high school. And she said, well, I know one thing about you, and for that reason I would think that you, since you like the girls. I said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, that all the teachers are not men, they're all women. They can't get men to volunteer to teach kids. And I said, well, since you put it the way you are, there's lots of single women for me to communicate with. And that's why I switched to elementary. So the first school I taught in, the only one that was a male other than me was the principal.
There you go.
And he got mad at me toward the end of the semester. And I said, I have half a mind to quit. He said, you wouldn't quit. And I said, well, consider it done. I quit. I finished out the year, and I left teaching for about 3 years. Then I came back again. You got credit for 3 or 4 if you were in the military 3 or 4 years. And but I think I taught 21, 22 years. Not as a lot less than some of the teachers taught.
Married.
Got married in 1950.
And how many kids?
2 boys.
All right.
One's Brad, he's 46, and Guy, he's 66.
Where did the Guy Whidden action figure come from?
Oh, came from China. And the fellow who was working with us Chinese, his family were originally from China.
Yeah.
But he's had problems since. You can't seem to get them. They've sold a lot over there, though.
Well, whose idea was it?
You want to get one?
Well, if I could, but whose idea was to have an action figure of Guy Whidden?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I don't know how that originated.
What do you, and I ask a lot of veterans this, what do you attribute to your getting through the war, like you did, making it home, basically?
What do I attribute to my getting through?
Yeah.
Up there. Yeah. I don't remember ever being afraid, because it seemed like every time I got in a problem, I survived.
Yeah.
So I don't say I was a brave guy, because at one time I didn't think I was brave. So I don't think I was just brave. I think God put something in my system. So I kind of bounced through the war without any much problem. I mean, I'm brave. I said I had a lot of help.
Yeah.
But they would just look at me like I was crazy.
But you knew.
Huh?
You knew.
I knew. I knew that I was getting through these things. I could, sometime I'll tell you all the different things that happened where he pulled me through.